There is a version of the Goldie Hawn story that most people know, the Oscar winner with the infectious laugh and the decades-long partnership with Kurt Russell that Hollywood has held up as proof that lasting love does not require a marriage certificate. That version is true as far as it goes. But behind it sits another story, one that involves two marriages that both collapsed under the specific weight of what it costs to love someone whose ambition and independence consistently exceed the boundaries that the people around her are prepared for. Bill Hudson has spoken about the end of his marriage to Goldie Hawn in terms that are by turns wounded, accusatory, and occasionally self-aware, and while the full truth of any marriage belongs only to the people inside it, what the documented record shows about what happened between them is considerably more complicated than the romantic mythology that surrounds Goldie's later life allows. The reason Bill Hudson divorced Goldie Hawn, or the reason the marriage ended depending on whose account you accept, is a story about fame, independence, the specific demands that extraordinary professional success places on domestic arrangements, and a woman who understood, eventually, that the institution of marriage was never going to accommodate who she actually was. Goldie Jean Hawn was born on November 21, 1945, in Washington, D.C., according to her documented biography, the daughter of Edward Rutledge Hawn, a band conductor, and Laura Steinhoff, who ran both a dance school and a jewelry shop. Her father's lineage included Edward Rutledge, the youngest signer of the Declaration of Independence, a biographical detail that Goldie has referenced across various interviews with genuine pride. She grew up in Tacoma Park, Maryland, in a household that was culturally layered, her father of German and English Protestant background, her mother Jewish and of Hungarian immigrant descent, with Goldie raised in the Jewish tradition. She began ballet and tap dancing at age 3, performed with the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo in the Nutcracker at 10, and by the time she reached high school was already someone for whom performing was a primary language rather than a hobby. She departed from American University after a brief period studying drama and opened her own ballet school in 1964. The same year she made her stage debut playing Juliet in a Virginia Shakespeare Festival production, according to documented accounts of her early career. She worked as a go-go dancer in New York clubs in the mid-1960s, moved to California, found work in musical theater productions, and eventually landed a role on the short-lived television sitcom Good Morning World in 1967. What she did with that material, infusing a stock blonde character with genuine comedic timing and a quality of sharp wit concealed within apparent innocence, attracted the attention that led to her breakthrough on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. On that show, Goldie Hawn became a phenomenon, playing the giggling ditzy blonde with the complete control of someone who understood the joke from the inside. America fell in love with what appeared to be charming naivety and was actually a precise, self-directed comic intelligence. Her film career launched immediately and spectacularly. Cactus Flower in 1969 cast her opposite Walter Matthau, and she won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for that performance, according to documented Academy Award records, before she had turned 25. The performances that followed demonstrated range that the public had not anticipated, from the drama of the Sugarland Express, the 1974 film that was Steven Spielberg's theatrical directing debut, to the comedy of Butterflies Are Free to the satirical ensemble of Shampoo. She was becoming one of Hollywood's most commercially and critically significant performers, someone whose presence in a film changed its commercial prospects significantly. And it was during the period of this ascending trajectory that her first marriage ended and her second began. Her first husband, Gus Triconis, was a dancer and filmmaker who had appeared in the original cast of West Side Story on Broadway and in the 1961 film adaptation, according to documented accounts of his career. They met in 1966, when Goldie's star had not yet risen dramatically, and married in 1969, the same year Cactus Flower was released and Goldie's professional life changed permanently. The marriage lasted until their separation in 1973, according to documented records of their relationship. By then, the fundamental dynamic of the partnership had been restructured by the difference between what Goldie's career had become and what Gus's had remained. She was on red carpets and in conversations about major Hollywood productions. He was working in television and struggling to find consistent directorial work. He later told people close to him, according to accounts that circulated in the years following their separation, that the distance had grown out of her entry into a world of celebrity and social connection that he had no natural place in. Goldie's own account of the ending, given in a 1976 People magazine interview, described a person who had run dry emotionally and needed to step back and find herself again. The divorce was finalized in 1975. Bill Hudson was the lead singer and front man of the Hudson Brothers, a pop-rock group that had achieved genuine commercial momentum in the early 1970s, appearing on television variety programs and generating enough teen idol attention to constitute real fame, according to documented accounts of the group's career. He had been born in Portland, Oregon, the eldest of 3 brothers, raised by his mother Eleanor Salerno after his father left the family when Bill was approximately 6 years old, according to accounts he has given across various interviews about his childhood. That early experience of paternal abandonment shaped his understanding of family and his desire for stability in ways that would prove deeply relevant to how his marriage to Goldie Hawn ultimately fell apart. He met Goldie Hawn on a commercial flight in the summer of 1975, according to documented accounts of their relationship's beginning. The encounter was accidental, the chemistry immediate, and the relationship developed with a speed that both of them have described across different interviews as intense and overwhelming. On December 31, 1975, Goldie filed for divorce from Gus Triconis and became engaged to Bill Hudson on the same day, according to documented records of those events, a coincidence of timing that speaks to the urgency with which the new relationship was being pursued. They married in July 1976, a month after her divorce from Gus was finalized. Their daughter Kate Hudson was born in 1979, according to documented records, and their son Oliver Hudson in 1976, both of whom would eventually build their own significant careers in film and television. The marriage lasted until 1980, when they separated, with the divorce finalized in 1982, according to documented records of their separation. In the years and decades since, Bill Hudson has spoken about what happened during those years in terms that are consistently critical of Goldie and consistently self-exculpatory in a way that reflects genuine pain rather than pure fabrication, but that represents only one side of a complicated experience. In his 2011 memoir, Two Versions, The Other Side of Fame and Family, he described a marriage that he experienced as characterized by fundamental incompatibility between what he wanted, a traditional family structure with defined roles and mutual commitment, and what Goldie wanted, which he characterized as freedom from exactly those constraints. He wrote about the specific moment of their wedding, describing Goldie whispering to him immediately after the ceremony asking whether he was sure they had done the right thing, a detail he presented as the first visible crack in what he had hoped would be a solid foundation. His most pointed allegation about the marriage's failure, repeated across multiple interview contexts over the years, concerned the nature of Goldie's approach to their romantic commitment. He claimed that she had proposed an arrangement that departed from conventional marital fidelity, and that when he attempted to adapt to that arrangement out of his love for her, the reality of how it functioned in practice proved devastating rather than liberating. He has described feeling that the terms of the arrangement applied differently to each of them, that Goldie operated with a freedom that he found impossible to genuinely accept even when he intellectually consented to it. His account positioned him as someone who loved her deeply and who sacrificed his own instincts about commitment in an attempt to make the relationship work on terms she required, only to find that what he was sacrificing did not produce the reciprocity he had hoped for. Goldie Hawn has not addressed these specific allegations in detail across her public statements about the marriage. What she has said, in various interview contexts over the years, is that the men she loved in those early marriages were unable to manage the specific pressure of being partnered with someone whose professional success consistently exceeded their own. She described the dynamic as one where her ambition and her visibility became burdens that her husbands could not carry without eventually finding the weight intolerable. In that framing, the marriages failed not because of infidelity or incompatibility of values in the conventional sense, but because the structure of fame and the specific dynamics it creates within domestic partnerships made sustainable equality impossible. The men wanted partners who would exist in a defined relationship to their own ambitions and identities, and Goldie was never going to be that. The aftermath of the divorce produced one of the most publicly documented estrangements between a parent and adult children in Hollywood history. Oliver and Kate Hudson were raised primarily by Goldie and Kurt Russell, who entered Goldie's life in 1983 when they made the film Swing Shift together and who became the central stable male figure in both children's lives without ever formally adopting them. They called him Pa, according to multiple documented accounts of their family dynamic, and the warmth of their relationship with him was visible across decades of public appearances and interviews. Bill Hudson, by contrast, became progressively more absent from their daily lives, a pattern that he has attributed to deliberate alienation orchestrated by Goldie and that Oliver in particular addressed publicly and painfully in a 2015 Father's Day social media post describing the day as Abandonment Day. A statement that shocked people who encountered it and that opened a rupture previously kept largely out of public view. Bill responded by stating in an interview that Goldie had spent years working to create distance between him and his children, a claim that Goldie's representatives have not substantively engaged with in public. By 2018, some degree of reconciliation between Bill and Oliver was being reported, with Oliver indicating in an appearance on Larry King Now that he and his father had begun speaking again, according to documented reporting on that conversation. The process was described as early and tentative rather than complete, a beginning rather than a resolution, but it represented a shift from the complete estrangement that had characterized their relationship for years. Goldie Hawn's most extended and honest public discussion of her views on marriage came in statements she made on the Today Show that have been widely quoted and discussed. She said that marriage was never her goal and that it had never worked for her. She said that for her and Kurt Russell, love was about choice rather than contract, and that what marriage had become in practical terms was, in many ways, big business, a financial and legal arrangement that said little about the actual quality of a relationship. The implication of that framing, applied retrospectively to her marriages to Gus Triconis and Bill Hudson, is that she entered both relationships with a fundamental incompatibility with the institution itself, not with the specific men, and that the men who married her were seeking something from that institution that she was never in a position to provide. Bill Hudson's life after the marriage moved through additional complexity. He married actress Cindy Williams of Laverne and Shirley fame in 1982, the same year his divorce from Goldie was finalized, according to documented records, and that marriage produced 2 children, Emily and Zachary Hudson, before ending in divorce in 2000. He fathered another child, Lalania, in 2006, according to reported accounts of his later life. The Hudson brothers' music career had effectively concluded by the early 1980s, and his attempts to sustain a professional identity in the entertainment industry after the group disbanded produced limited results. He described himself across various interview contexts as a man who had spent years feeling defined primarily by his relationship to more famous people rather than by anything he had built independently. What the full documented record of the Goldie Hawn and Bill Hudson marriage reveals is not a simple story of one person's wrongdoing or one person's victimhood. It is a story about 2 people with fundamentally different understandings of what a marriage was supposed to be and provide, who tried to build a shared life at a moment when one of them was becoming one of the most recognized women in American entertainment, and the other was watching an earlier moment of fame contract into something considerably more modest. The specific allegation about an open marriage, if accurate, sits within a larger pattern of 2 people who wanted incompatible things and who both suffered real consequences when the incompatibility became undeniable. Goldie found, eventually, in Kurt Russell something that neither of her marriages had produced, a partnership that allowed her to remain fully herself without requiring the institution of marriage to contain it. Bill found, in the years of public statements and the memoir he eventually wrote, a way to process loss that helped him but did not resolve the fundamental questions about what his marriage had actually been and why it had actually ended.